So net neutrality was repealed by the FCC today. Apple apparently slowing down some phones based on the age of the batteries that are in them. That's kind of a weird one. And the notch, is it ugly? Yes, no, maybe, but either way, it appears to be a good gimmick. All that and more tonight on Go Cell Phone Repair Tech Talk Live. Let's get this thing started. And I see we already have actually our first question. So before I jump into that, let me go over to the chat. Welcome everyone who is joining us this evening. Kodak, I saw your comment pop up there earlier, and that's kind of a complex question there. But my first one would be, have you already watched my screw removal video? I'm assuming that you have, and if so, I know that's not going to be probably a good example of how to remove that, and obviously that is a very, very sensitive situation to be in, because if you do any damage to that home button, as you know, you're kind of lights out. But the good news is what gets damaged the easiest is the turtle IC, which is over off to the side. So if you're talking about the screw directly behind the home button, I think that most of the concepts that I outlined in that video as far as how to remove screws would apply. The only difference would be you really don't want to apply excessive downwards pressure on that thing. So I wish I had a great answer for you, but I haven't had to deal with that one yet. So let's leave your question up there in the chat, and if any other techs are on right now and you've run into that where you have to get a screw, I'm assuming from directly behind the home button, right? You're talking about the one right behind it. If anyone's encountered that and wants to let us in on how they dealt with it, feel free to put a comment there in the chat. I haven't run into that specific situation. I don't think it would be too different than the others. You just need to get something that's going to grip the inside of that thread. Definitely need to get that screw out though, because if you don't, if you just drilled off the head, then obviously you're going to have some problems when you try to put it back together or really getting it apart. So that's a tough one. If we scroll through here a little bit as people join in, because they tend to come on, a few at a time within the next 10 or 15 minutes, go ahead and feel free to post your question over into the chat again so that we can, kind of get a refresh on that. Wayne says rubber band over screwdriver. Have you done that one, Wayne? Because I've used the rubber band over screwdriver tip. I haven't done it on the home button on an iPhone 7. I mean, I have been super, super careful with those because, we know that's kind of the real dangerous area you have to watch out for. Now, that being said, because I saw your question, I wanted to run over and grab this and also kind of ask you which screwdriver you use to remove that, because there's a lot of different tri-points out there, and some of them are really terrible. And if you combine that with, just not being seated properly, it's very easy to damage those screws. And I found something recently that I wanted to share with everyone tonight, so I might as well do it now. This is, to my knowledge, besides those little short stubby tri-point screwdrivers, which I think are pretty decent, this is probably better than that, in my opinion. I found this recently, and what makes this one different is that instead of having the standard pointed tip at the end, it's actually got like a blunt nose. So it's almost like a Japanese industrial standard. And when you put these in, they tend to seat very accurately, as opposed to the pointed ones where if you look at those under a microscope, they're not really machined that well all the time. So usually we're okay. So Wayne said he's done it before. Give that a shot, but obviously make sure you have a good screwdriver in the future. And if anyone else wants to add something on there, feel free to do so. Now, I do want to go back to the topics that I had outlined for this evening, because I think that, no matter who you are, you should at least be concerned about this. And there are 2 points here, and one of them is going to be this. A lot of people who I've talked to really don't care or understand or have an awareness of what's going on with net neutrality and the implications behind the repeal that just was passed today by the FCC. Now, the good news to this is that it's not necessarily all over. Okay, so here's the thing. Either side, I am completely open to hearing arguments on any topic on either side. So when people listen to me and they go, oh, this guy, he's really, pro net neutrality, it doesn't make me right. It just makes that what I believe in. And I've always said that, I'm willing to hear both sides of an argument. Obviously, in this case, I believe that net neutrality is a good thing. There is a small majority, basically 25% of the population is what it seems to look like, thinks that net neutrality should go away. And I'm fine with that. If you believe on one side or the other, you should definitely voice your opinion. You should be able to cast a vote. You should be able to contact people and let them know how you feel. But the thing that really bugs me about this is not, almost equally as the fact that the FCC, which is put into place, one would think as a government agency to look out for the best interests of the citizens in the country where that organization exists, right? Isn't that what government is all about? To take care of the nation, to take care of the citizens, and to make sure that everyone is treated equally and has fair access to opportunity and things like that. So, it's bad enough that they're repealing net neutrality. If you know how the lobbying system works, long story short is companies with a lot of money can kind of manipulate the government to make laws that benefit them. That's one part of it. But the other thing that really gets me about this is the fact that not only did they go against what everybody said, they just blatantly pretty much made it apparent that the FCC doesn't care about what the public thinks. So, even if you were on the other side of the issue and you said, hey, I don't want net neutrality, what if the FCC said, well, we don't care what you want? Because that's pretty much what they did here. They said, we know that 75% of the people polled and all these comments that have come in, and we found that they're making fake comments, for pro-net neutrality, or I'm sorry, against net neutrality. They already know what the public wants, and they pretty much went public, and they use this Ajit guy as, I think he's just kind of like the scapegoat. He's like the fall guy pretty much for this. So we have a face we can look at and go, oh, it's all his fault, he's a bad guy. But that's kind of how it seems to work in politics. They put someone as a representative of a new policy and we go, oh, this guy, it's all his fault, we hate him. But at the same time, it kind of takes the heat off of the organization that is making these changes. And this is what's really important here. Number one, the people who are running the FCC really need to be held accountable for their actions, not just say, oh, well, it was this, this guy that's in charge, it's all up to him. It's not. No one person can run a government organization by himself. There's always many other people that are involved in that process. And to just have a figurehead that's, out there in public for people to get upset at or happy with or, vote for this guy or whatever, it's ridiculous. Now, part two to this is that, hopefully my slides are working here. The good news is that it is not completely over, okay? The FCC has decided that they are going to repeal net neutrality, but it's still got to get past Congress. And there's still an opportunity for us to contact people in our districts and say, listen, I know that you're voting for or against or whatever it is, but here's how I feel. And if you want my vote next year, this is what you should know. And it's just ridiculous when you see there's actually a webpage, and I'll put this source in the links also. There's a webpage where you can see which senators and which representatives and which people from every district are supporting or opposing net neutrality and how much money they received from these big companies that wanted to take it away. And some of them, it's pretty sad. It's like less than $5,000 bought someone's vote to get them to say, okay, this thing that everybody wants, that 75% of the public wants, we're just going to get rid of it. And that was the price. It was like less than $5,000. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to me. Money talks. That's the thing. And this is a very, double-edged kind of sword here where we talk about capitalism, and I think I brought this up earlier, probably earlier in the week on another live stream that had some technical difficulties, but money is absolutely what motivates people and what motivates governments and governing agencies and corporations and everything else. And when we live in a capitalistic society, which I am not, trying to discourage anyone from, but we have to look at the long-term implications, when it's taken to an extreme, where you get to the point where a big corporation can spend enough money to set the rules and to make the laws that apply to everyone else. It's crazy. There needs to be some way for someone to step in and say, hey, we need to look at the greater good and, what this is going to mean to people. And there's a chance that maybe there's a senator, I want to say in New Jersey, somebody back east, it might have even been, was it Virginia? I'll have to look it up there, but there's at least one person in Congress who is writing a bill to block this thing, to stop it from happening. So, whether that's just his soapbox to kind of gain popularity or whatever his motivation is behind doing this, good for him. I hope that a lot of people get behind this and say, look, you can't just start passing laws that are exactly the opposite of what people want. It's nuts. Netflix tweeted about it. Not sure if I saw the tweet. Yeah, this is a crazy thing too. It's really ironic too because my cable company picked up Netflix, so it's in the package somehow, at no charge, at least for the time being. But when I called in and I kind of told them how I felt, which I know doesn't get it very far, you call into customer service and really you can't blame the person on the other end of the phone. They need a job, they need to make a living, and they have to say what the company tells them to. But I said, you know what? It really sucks what you guys are doing. I don't like this. I want Netflix. I'm getting it through the internet. I really don't even care about cable TV. I don't watch any of this programming that you have. It's all so biased, and it's ridiculous. And then they mentioned that they have Streamflix in their package, which I looked at Streamflix. It's not Netflix. It's not the same thing. So, fortunately for them, they made Netflix part of their package. But what does that mean? If and when this actually goes into effect, they can say, hey, you want Netflix? It's X dollars a month, just like HBO, just like Showtime, just like any add-on that you get, which is the exact opposite of the whole idea behind streaming. It was to get away from cable companies and satellite companies and cut the cord, and now they're saying, okay, well, we can't beat that, so we're going to have to just take it over and make that what we sell. It's nuts. Wayne said, sadly, I believe in the USA voting is optional. Here in Australia, it's compulsory. Yeah, I think you said that. I think we talked about that a little bit last week, right? You can't complain here about not having your say. People are lazy, but if you have to vote, yeah, I think that's part of the problem. And the other thing with our system here is that it is so outdated. The idea of representative government in a day and age where we can instantly communicate with Washington or with the other side of the world, what's the real point of having someone that you elect for this small district as your representative to go tell the larger organization what its population wants? We really don't need that anymore. All we need to do is convert the information or the opinions or the ideas or the beliefs that people have into a signal that we send somewhere. Obviously there are some potentials for abuse behind that. If somebody hacks in, which is a real thing nowadays. But if there was a way that you could sit in your home and vote, I think that many more people would participate in that process. And we definitely have the technology to do it. There's a way to make it happen. But one thing about government that we know is that things change and move very slowly. So we're kind of still stuck in a system that was designed to function a long time ago, before we had the type of communication that we have today. I get tongue-tied every time I do this. So it's really mind-blowing, but something's got to change, obviously. And there's always a tipping point. There's always, hey, they're going to keep doing this and people aren't going to like it, and they're going to do a little more and people aren't going to like it, and eventually people won't stand for it anymore, whatever that means, whatever that action it requires them to take, which, you would think would be disconnecting the service. Like, oh, well, you don't like what the cable company is doing, you just don't use their service anymore. Well, that's not realistic anymore. That's a little bit like telling someone, if you don't like what the electric company does, just shut off your power. We can't do that. We rely on these resources. Now, a lot of us need this for our jobs. We have to be connected. We need broadband. And when you only have one choice, how does it not make sense to have regulatory agencies step in and say, if you're the only provider in that area, you have to allow people to have access to these things without price gouging on stuff that that they've been using for a long period of time and they've taken for granted. And we're just kind of, for anyone who's probably under the age of 20 has just grown up thinking this is the way it's always been, and it's taken a long time for us to get here. And we have all this incredible technology, and we've had the government actually put money into this infrastructure that they built out, that these big companies have benefited from, where they make tons of money, and now they're saying, well, we need to get the government out of the picture because otherwise no one's going to invest in it. And all that profit went straight to these big corporations. So there's a lot of, I want to say, just deception going on. And my brother sent me a text message today from a local news station with a screenshot where they actually mentioned net neutrality, which has been something that you just don't see on TV. I mean, few and far between. Everyone's talking about Russia, everyone's talking about, Trump, and everyone's talking about all these crazy politicians we have doing really bad things, and everyone's talking about, abuses at work and sexual harassment and things like that, which we should be. But when you have an hour of that, and then at the end of the hour, you just repeat the same thing, and you never include any new information, especially about things that are in the best interest of your viewers, it's very apparent that the broadcasters are, having their strings pulled, so to speak, by the advertisers, who are these big cable companies. Without them, there's a lot of missing money there. So it's weird how that works, and I don't know what the solution is. But I hope that everyone will take a minute, go to battleforthenet.com. They actually have a text. You can send a text message and they will tell you who you can contact. They have form letters. You don't have to take your time and write up an official letter and think of any. All you have to do is say, here, I feel this way. Here's who I need to contact. And they have a pre-made message you can send to that person. And like I said, I'm not trying to convince anyone to believe in one way or the other, but I think it's very important that we let the people that represent us at least know how we feel about this issue. And it could end up being a very sad day. My prediction really is that over time, if this actually goes through, and I've heard a few, very few people here and there that'll say, oh, we should get rid of net neutrality. And I always question whether they're trolling or whether maybe they're employed by or have heavy investments in one of these big companies. But I think the reality of it is that if net neutrality does go into effect and we really see this happen, that it will be a very gradual transition into pay for play, pay to play. So I don't think that the day that net neutrality goes into effect, suddenly we lose access to YouTube and Netflix and anything else. I think more likely what will happen, and I'm putting this on record because I want to come back here and be able to say in the future, this is what I thought what it was gonna be. And maybe gain some credibility there so that people will hopefully, listen to this message. And that is that if they gradually change net neutrality, they gradually change your access a little bit at a time. So in the beginning, net neutrality goes into effect and the cable companies get to say, hey, look at us. See, we're not bad guys. We didn't change anything. We're not charging you anything extra. Everything's good. Everything's better. We have more programming. You're all happy. We don't need net neutrality. And then little by little, it's these very slow implementations that allow people to just kind of tolerate things that they normally wouldn't. If it was a complete 180 from day one, you would have people outraged all over the place. But when you do it little at a time, just a tiny, tiny bit, we're going to take this away. But don't worry, we're going to give you this other thing that, probably no one cares about. Probably some more home shopping network or I don't know, whatever. I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there are people who enjoy home shopping network, but there's a lot of programming that I don't care about. But I have a feeling that's how these packages are going to look. It's going to be like, okay, there's just this one little extra thing you have to pay for now, but we're going to give you all this other stuff, and everyone should be happy. And probably for the first 6 months, they won't change anything, and they'll get to say, hey, see, net neutrality, forget about it. It wasn't a problem. It's gone. And then in the long term, we will see the true effects. A couple of years down the line, if this all happens, I think we'll find out what it really means. Okay, so let me jump back to the chat here. Tech for your needs. It is confusing. I'm trying to understand better. Started watching more stuff about. Are you talking about net neutrality? Because yeah, it's very difficult. And what makes it? I hope that that's what you're referring to. What makes it very difficult to understand is that we have people in government, and the one time that I saw someone talking about net neutrality on a news network, they described it exactly the opposite of what it was. Like they took everything about net neutrality and said, that's exactly what we need to get rid of. And I'm going, no, that's what we already have. But they're so confused, or, either they're being told to say something or they really don't understand what it means. And they say, oh yeah, net neutrality is terrible because then you can't have access to what you want. No, that's not what it means. It's exactly the opposite. And this is a story that is being sent out there, in this day and age of misinformation where people go to Facebook to get their news, or they look on Twitter to see what people are talking about, and that's reality. All you have to do is have 20,000 bots that are promoting whatever your agenda is, and people start to believe that that is the truth, that is reliable, that that's really what's happening. So it's unfortunate. And again, I don't know what the answer is other than to talk to people that who understand and trust what you're saying. Because when people have to rely on the media, or rely on social media for memes and things that, can really just be generated out of the air to say whatever you want, it's a scary time to live in, because people will buy into something just because they see a lot of it. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit, because we're going to talk briefly about consumerism. But let's see. Government here certainly stuffed up our broadband here. Started here as fiber to the premise, now mix mainly fiber to the node, because it was cheaper to build, but it turned into a complete cluster. Were you watching Fox News? I was, Harvey. I was watching Fox News, and I wish I could remember who the person was that said this, but it just blew, like my head wanted to explode. I wanted to reach to the TV and grab the guy and go, did you not understand what you just said? It was on Fox News. I'm going to try to figure out who the guy was, because I was just like, I can't believe they would say that. And, you know, we typically get two just polar opposites if you watch Fox and CNN. And for that reason, I watch both of them, because I like to have an idea of what people at either extreme of the political spectrum are thinking. You know, that is my motivation. I got to tell you, when I watch Fox and CNN, I watch them with a high degree of skepticism, because they both have a clear agenda. And at the same time, watching Fox, it's like, I get the feeling that their philosophy is, let's hire a lot of attractive women and people are going to believe what we say, no matter how ridiculous it is. Like, that's really the impression that I get. And, you know, they get a lot of things right, but they get a lot of things wrong, just like any other major news source. So, but it was Fox News. You called it. Yes, net neutrality. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, sorry, Tech. It's just that as I'm going through here and talking and I run back to the comments, I want to make sure we weren't talking about something else. Did we lose? We lost on FCC as far as net neutrality. It doesn't mean we've lost completely. It means for the time being, this particular organization has decided what they want to do. Now, Congress can stop this. It can be prevented. And it's, you know, funny, speaking of memes, I saw one today, and this addresses people outside of the U.S., which, by the way, Washington State has said that even if net neutrality goes through, they are going to write their own law to prevent basically big companies from having net neutrality taken out of the picture, if that makes sense. So they're going to kind of have their own version of net neutrality. Supposedly, it's possible for the FCC to kind of override that. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but yay for Washington. We need more states to stand up and say, hey, this is what we want where we live. And if enough states agree on something, you know, eventually it's got to become federal policy. But for the time being, that's the only one that I'm aware of. Yeah, it just, and Luke Skywalker, what? Wait a minute. What do you mean R.I.P. Luke Skywalker? I hope you're not talking about Mark Hamill, because I haven't heard anything about that. Tell me, not Luke. Tell me that nothing happened to Mark Hamill. Definitely, and I think it's too early to say RIP net neutrality, but yeah, we're like 50% of the way there. I'm surprised California isn't planning on doing the same as Washington. I am also, obviously, I'm in California. California is a very liberal state, and at the same time, they are very pro consumer rights and probably anti, you know, whatever comes out of Washington at the moment, because there's a lot of crazy stuff happening there. So I'm really surprised too. I hope that they do. I actually have a list of the Congress people in California who are pro and against net neutrality. And again, I'll put that down in the comment section after this is over. So if anyone wants to call someone up, send them a fax, or, you know, just make fun of them, you can do that. You'll know what your representatives are doing. But for anyone outside of the U.S., it may not seem like, you know, as big of a deal not having to deal with that since you're not here. But if you think about this in the long term, you know, if any amount of your entertainment or your media or anything that you enjoy on the internet is coming from the U.S., there's a potential that this could be impacted by this removing net neutrality. A lot of these companies could just basically stop the flow of whatever it is that's going through, and you might see the effects where, you know, no matter what part of the world you're in. And that's the thing that, you know, concerns a lot of people that aren't in the U.S., not to mention that kind of slippery slope effect that we have, where when the U.S. sets a policy into place, then other countries kind of look at what we're doing and say, okay, you know, that's probably the right, you know, for whatever reasons, they end up adopting very similar legislation. So I'm pretty sure that Canada is against this, which is good news. I hope that they hold that stance. And as far as Europe, I know that I read something, oh gosh, where was it? I probably should look this up, but I want to say it was England. It was somewhere in the UK where they're saying, yeah, no, we're going to keep net neutrality, and that's the way it is. But if you're communicating with someone that's based in the US, I don't know how that's going to work out. You know, it may or may not affect you. It's just going to get very weird here if this goes through, not only because people are going to be mad because they can't get Netflix or YouTube or have to pay extra for stuff, but also the media already controls so much of the dissemination of information here. So when you get into the political part of this, you know, being able to control what people are exposed to, you know, what kind of propaganda your population has access to, that's my real concern. You know, if you want to change the the environment of any any population, whether it's a nation or a state or a city or a county or whatever it is, if you limit the information that that population has to facts, you can basically control the minds of the population, which is a scary thing. One of the big positive effects of net neutrality is that we get to see everyone's idea. And, obviously I don't endorse any negativity, especially spreading hate or extremism or, anything else like that. But at the same time, it's very important that we have free speech in this country. And this is something that is being threatened, in this day and age where we communicate through the web. We use our internet access to get information and to spread information to other people. That's being threatened by this. And that's the real underlying problem here that I see. Their profits are one thing, but being able to control what people have access to, that's pretty messed up. Media are the most powerful people in the world. They are. I could not agree more. They're so powerful that that's where our president gets his information from. So whatever that means. Okay, so I'm going to get off of this. I will definitely keep the conversation open on net neutrality because I think this is huge. That's what today is all about. So I do want to keep that open. There are a couple more things I wanted to show you that I thought was interesting because this is a tech channel. But obviously, net neutrality is very closely related to technology. And we can continue to revisit this topic throughout the stream here. Look at what media has done to Trump. Here, media just follow USA journalist history. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. And it could just as easily be a liberal president who watched CNN instead. Okay, so I don't want anyone, I don't like to draw any lines in the sand or endorse any idea or person or anything like that. But the truth of the matter is right now we have a leader who gets his information from a media source that is pro him. So it's like, whatever you do, they love and continue to tell you you're doing a great job, well, for the most part. And that's a positive reinforcement for you to think that you got it right, that you're doing the right thing. It's really crazy that for any president to watch TV, to get the news, to see what's going on in the world, when you have access to organizations that know probably at any given moment, like what anyone in the world is doing, and instead you turn on the television to get your information. To that one, I don't get. That is nuts. Some people's jobs rely solely on the internet. Absolutely. This is the argument that I have with people who are against net neutrality, where they say, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to use the product. It doesn't work that way. And another great analogy that I read today was, think about it this way. If we had all of the highways in the country were owned by one company, and that company got to do whatever they wanted to when it came to you being able to use those roads. And if you didn't like it, you don't have to use the road anymore. Well, that's ludicrous. We need, in this day and age, we've come to the conclusion that our citizens enjoy a certain standard of living, to the point where if you can't afford to buy a cell phone, we will give you a cell phone. You need to be able to communicate. And this isn't a new thing. The whole Lifeline program, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's all about communications. The Lifeline program that we have for citizens in the U.S. says that if you can't afford it, we will subsidize a telephone for you to use in your house. That started like back in the 70s, if I remember correctly. It was either the 70s or 80s. We decided that having access to a phone to call 911 or whatever it is, every U.S. citizen should be entitled to that. And if they can't afford it, we're going to figure out a way to make it affordable. And we did the same thing with the government. They call it the Obama phone. I can't remember what the official name was for it. They came to the conclusion that, in this day and age, everyone needs a cell phone. And I would argue that in this day and age, everyone should be entitled to internet access, and not internet access that gets to tell you, based on what their advertisers think, what you should believe, what you should have access to, and what you should see. It's just nuts. This is an attack on democracy at its core. Okay, let me go back to the chats here. We have, hey Mike, I just tuned in and I don't know if net neutrality is good or bad. Is this repeal a good thing? Okay, so Nate, here's the thing. And I'm sorry, I forgot where you're from, Nate, but here's the thing. I don't want to make the decision for anyone. I don't want to say something is good or bad. I don't want to be that person, but I do want to tell people what I know about it. And I would encourage you to research it to come to your own conclusion. But in a nutshell, it's this. When you go on the internet, you don't pay extra to go to YouTube. Okay, you're on YouTube right now. If you have internet access, you can watch YouTube, or you can watch Netflix, or you can be on Facebook. You can do whatever you want, right? And all that matters is how much data you're using. In the worst case scenario, you have so many gigabytes of data that you can use per month. Without net neutrality, companies that deliver your internet access to you, so whoever that is, whoever you have your internet access through, and this includes wireless carriers, they can start charging you based on what you are doing on the internet. So if they don't have a piece of YouTube, or they don't have a piece of Facebook, or whatever it is, they can say, oh, on your new package, here's what you get. You get local news stations, you get broadband internet, you get HBO, and if you want Facebook, it's only an extra $5 a month. Or if you want YouTube, it's only a number of, X dollars a month. So without net neutrality, they have the ability to basically a la carte whatever they want. They can see what you're doing on the internet and decide whether or not it's going to cost you more to go to any specific website or to stream any specific service. So it's not about the bandwidth. It's not about the data usage. It's about choosing things that they will benefit from and giving that stuff to you for free or at a lower cost, and charging you more to go to places where they're not really making any money. That's the easiest way that I can describe one of the motivations behind doing away with net neutrality. In my opinion, net neutrality shouldn't have to exist. We shouldn't need this, but the fact of the matter is we do, because we know how these corporations work, and we know exactly what's going to happen if it goes away. That's what I believe. So, Nate, I encourage you to talk to other people and hear their opinions and do your research, but it's a bad thing that it's going away, in my opinion, if that counts for anything. The repeal is a very bad thing. I've been to USA many times. I find something unbelievable that many people believe your mainstream media as gospel. I'm like, yes, sorry, rest of the world doesn't think that way. Good thing for us. And this is one of the things that was crazy to me, is just how powerful the media is. Because probably up until about age, 30 or so, people would always say, oh, the media is controlling everybody. And, I always thought, I don't really watch the media that much. I'm not really that interested, because I was young and I didn't care and I had other things to do. But ever since 9/11, that was really kind of a turning point for me. I was glued to cable network news. At the time, for whatever reason, I chose CNN and I tuned into there and I started watching it. And I did notice over time that there's a very clear agenda. No matter where you go, when it comes to CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of these media companies have someone behind them that says, we need everyone to believe this, so that they have a very clear bias. And it's nuts. I'm glad that the rest of the world doesn't think that way. I'm sure that there are some parts of the world where it's even worse, where the media is controlled by the government. So people only see, very repressive governments where they only see what they, North Korea is probably a great example of that, at least parts of it. But yeah, I'm glad that the rest of the world doesn't think the way that we do. I mean, we need diversity. We need people to have their own ideas and be able to make their own decisions. But over here, I can, I know more than a dozen people probably that if you talk to them and I told you what news network they watched, you'd know exactly what their mindset is on any given topic, because it's almost like they're being programmed by this steady stream of media that's coming in and saying, oh, this is great, this is terrible, just look at this, we have an argument that backs up, what we believe in, and you should believe it too. And people fall into that trap. It's a crazy thing about human nature. It just blows my mind, especially when a lot of it's not even real. The next step is extreme censorship. Posting something negative about Trump may put you on a blacklist. That's another one, Harvey, that concerns me to a very serious degree. If we're not already there, think about a point in time when you cannot say anything negative about your government or about your representatives. And when it gets to that, it's going to be really bad for a lot of reasons. Has Northern California wildfires affected you? It's interesting you asked that, Harvey. When the fires were taking place in the Napa Valley, we got a lot of ash here. We had alerts that, air quality alerts that were coming through. And they were telling us pretty much to stay indoors, to keep all our windows closed, not to turn on the ventilation. I wasn't displaced from my home. And fortunately, I don't know, I don't have any friends or family that were. Terrible for people who lived in up in Santa Rosa that got hit the worst. But we had ash here probably for about a week and a half after the fires. So it definitely affected us. They told us not to exercise outside. We had worse air quality than Beijing, which is apparently pretty bad. And people were walking around with respirators outside, the ones that the painters wear. And the stores sold out of those, so you couldn't find them. So yeah, it was pretty bad. I feel the worst for people who are just kind of caught with no place to stay. Obviously the fire took a lot of lives, which is sad. But if you're talking about Northern California's just had to stay indoors for about a week and a half. So, somewhat it was an inconvenience, but not nearly what the people who lived further north experienced. And just imagine, having your house just burned down, like having no place to go. You've got to get some sort of extended stay thing. And, when's my house? My girlfriend and I were just talking about this yesterday. What do you do at that point? Even if you have insurance, it's like, okay, I need a house built now. So how long is that going to take? And what if you're renting? What if your landlord says, well, I don't know, the house is gone, or the apartment or whatever that you're living in, you need to find a place to go. And if you don't have some sort of renter's insurance for fire, I don't know how that works out. I don't know if the homeowners, if the landlord covers you in some way or what, but yeah, it's nuts. I can guarantee you that in Australia, it would be political suicide for any government here. Good. But the USA ripple will follow on overseas. Yeah, that's another concern. I think that everyone, worldwide should really understand that long term, anything that we do here in one way or another, anything that any country, any major country in the world does, we see how the stock market is affected when something happens in China or Australia or anywhere else. When something big changes, it affects everyone. So we're all in this together to a certain extent. And it's not just people here, although we will feel the most severe effects in the short term for sure. I'm all for freedom, and it's a shame the censorship that is already in place. When I try to talk about it, others, they call me a conspiracy theorist. Of course, yeah, that's such an easy thing to say anytime someone proposes anything, outside of the status quo, so to speak. If you say, hey, you know what? I think there's something funny about this. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, and that drives me nuts. And my response is, at this point, I don't feel that I'm probably what the stereotypical conspiracy theorist would be. I don't worry about chemtrails. And I'm not saying that that's, I'm not going to argue either side on that. But I will say that we have to keep in mind that every conspiracy, every proven conspiracy that was 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt now accepted as being a real thing started out as a theory. Okay, every conspiracy started out as a theory. So that doesn't mean that, your neighbor got abducted by an alien. I mean, maybe he did. But, some of the far out ones, it's pretty easy to say, I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff where people will write you off as a conspiracy theorist just because you think different than what they happen to believe in at the moment. And it's a very interesting thing about human nature that we like to think that we have things figured out. And anytime someone challenges what we believe in, we will often be tempted to find a way to discount the opinion of that other person, because here's what I've been taught, here's what I believed in for years. Someone comes at me with a different idea and I have to say, man, there's something wrong with you. You don't know what you're talking about. It's human nature. We see it all the time. And for that reason, I try to remind myself, to keep an open mind every single day as long as I can. And if someone, suggests something different to me, I'm happy to hear them out, as long as it doesn't sound too off the wall, and see if there's any merit to it. But the majority of people don't do that. It's a weird phenomenon, isn't it? I look at the newspapers are dead. Who buys papers now? They are looking for another outlet to push their agenda. Yeah, newspapers. It's funny to me when I talk to people of a more mature generation and they ask me about a newspaper, and I can't remember the last time I picked one up unless I was using it for packing materials. But yeah, while in college in NorCal, I experienced the same thing in Chico. Lots of ash and black smoke. Got so bad I had to move back to SoCal. Wow. Yeah, and there's obviously you're aware that there are fires going on in Southern California now, which is awful. It's just a fire year, I guess. They're saying it's like one of the worst ones they've ever had in Southern California at this point. I mean, our equivalent of the FCC, this is Wayne from Australia, our equivalent of the FCC doesn't have the same power here, and we have a telecommunications industry, I'm not going to be able to say this, ombudsman to complain to about phone, internet, and power to force companies to comply. And we need something here, because this is just getting crazy. And, you know, the funny thing is that, like I said, they have this guy, this Ajit Pai, which, you know, guilty. I've made fun of him and cursed him and everything else, but he's really just someone that people can point a finger at and they can say, oh, it's all his fault. And I don't know if you saw it, but he made a video where he's dancing around on YouTube. They made a video of him in costume talking about all the great things you'll still be able to do with your internet once net neutrality goes away. And it's just kind of like, you know, it looks like he's just kind of laughing at everyone who's saying that they want to keep net neutrality, which, of course, why wouldn't he? We do have a broadband guarantee by government, whether fiber, wireless, or satellite provider, they still have to supply it, no excuse. Yeah, I hope that changes here. I don't know if it will, but we definitely need some consumer protection here. And when my libertarian friends start talking about how we need to keep the government out of business, you know, to an extent I agree, but there are some things that we just consider utilities here. And I would argue that internet access, if it's not already in that category, it should be. You know, it's 2017. You practically can't do your job, like someone just mentioned, without the internet. There are people that would be out of business if they didn't have it. I couldn't be doing this live stream right now without broadband internet. You know, I can't go back to dial-up and do this. So for that reason, if there's no competition in the area, and this would be a big game changer, you know, if you have competitors, then it's easy for someone to say, oh, well, if they're not going to give it to you, we will. But a lot of people don't have that. So in any particular market, mine included, they get to make the rules and set the prices. And I can't imagine spending more than I'm spending now on my internet. It's a big chunk of my monthly expenses. Lay down a gigabyte wire from NorCal to SoCal. You know, there was actually a company, or there was a city, I want to say. It was either a city or a county in Colorado who decided that they were going to build their own internet because they saw all this coming and said, you know what, here's what we're going to do. Let's not rely on them. We'll put our own wire down in the ground and we will build out infrastructure for our own internet so that if they want to pass net neutrality, whatever, they can do what they want. The city's going to decide what we do for our population, you know, for our citizens. And wouldn't you know it, they came in, the broadband companies, and lobbied against this bill to stop it. Like, they spent a ridiculous amount of money to come in and say, no, we don't want you building your own internet. So yeah, money is typically what it all seems to come down to. If anyone's just joining us, we're talking about net neutrality. It's still not too late. You can still contact your congresspeople. Go to battleforthenet.com. They will give you a form that you can either fill out, or there's also even a text message that you can send that will tell you who you need to contact. They have pre-made forms so you don't have to, you know, compose an argument or anything like that. You just sign your name to something and you send it in and it says, hey, I'm a voter. I'm one of your constituents. Here's what I think, and here's what you should remember when election time rolls around. And, you know, hopefully, it may not change things, but at least it's better than us just sitting back and saying, oh, the sky is falling and there's nothing that we can do about it. You know, at least we can take some action. And even if we don't stop it later on, when people come and take a look and say, look, all these people were in favor of net neutrality and I'm running for office, maybe we need to start this thing back up again and revive it, you know, hopefully. Only last few weeks, government forced all internet providers to refund users as they sold plans for the speed advertising 1040, but the infrastructure was physically unable to get those speeds. Yeah, and there was something similar about that. Gosh, I wish I could remember what it was, where a couple of these big companies in the U.S. got caught, basically not delivering on what they were charging for, and it had something to do very similar to what you're talking about, where they didn't have the capability to deliver the speeds that they were charging their customers for. And somebody needs to be able to come in and say, no, you know, you can't do that. And little by little, you know, I have to acknowledge that we have a very pro-big business administration at this point. And that's probably a nice way of putting it. It's not a government that is trying to help small businesses benefit. And it's not a government, that's agenda is let's help the people at the bottom. It's let's help business because they have this whole trickle down. I really didn't want to get too much into politics now, but I don't think that making big corporations and rich people more wealthy is, a guarantee that everyone is going to benefit from that. And we should have learned our lesson probably from Reaganomics, but I suppose history repeats itself depending on who's in office at the time. I think that torrents are going to be heavily throttled by companies, whether legitimate download or not. I would agree completely. In fact, I think they're trying to do away with torrents last time I heard. In the USA, there's a similar thing. Unfortunately, you usually get pennies on the dollar for hours of hassling. And here's another thing to keep in mind. It's really interesting because I've been getting spammed with promotional emails from companies that want me to either endorse or partner with them selling VPN services. And this is something that we don't, hear too much about, but I think that's something that we're going to start seeing a lot more of, especially when, they try to start taking down torrents and everything. For anyone who knows more about it, feel free to chime in. I'm certainly not the expert, but there's something called a virtual private network where all of the information that is coming to or from your connection is encrypted so that your provider doesn't know what the information is. And I think if net neutrality goes into effect and they start blocking things and making you pay extra for stuff, I have a feeling that the VPN market is going to explode because a lot of people are going to say, okay, well, we told you what you wanted and you didn't give it to us, and now you're taking things away and charging more money, but I can spend, a few dollars extra a month and have my own virtual private network where I can upload and download whatever I want. Although I, wouldn't imagine that it would be long before they figured out a way to throttle any VPN connection, but who knows? I'm probably getting out of my area of expertise here, but I'm really curious to know, to see what happens with that. New law says now all people must be able to check what speeds they can attain on a government website. And, I'm on I think it's speedtest.net, Ookla. I do that all the time. In fact, I did it today because I was getting crappy connection speed. And Harvey, you said something last week on the last stream, like Ajit Pai was out to get me. And I think you're right, because when I started the stream today, I had bad connection speed. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm supposed to have like 30 meg upload speed. And it said I didn't have sufficient speed to do the stream. And I'm going, this is just too much to be a coincidence. But anyways, I restarted everything and it started. It was weird. I went to speed test, checked my connection speed, everything looked good, restarted my stream, and I had my good connection speed again. So I'm not sure what that's about. What price do you pay there? Mine is for $90 for 140 unlimited data, and I'm on VPN. Are you talking about us in the US, in California, Wayne? Because if so, my connection, I've got a package with cable, which I don't care about, or fiber, whatever, TV service. And I'm on the second highest tier. There's like one that's even more expensive than this. And my cable bill is about $175 a month. And, the only reason I have it basically is for the broadband. I could care less about TV. I get everything streamed for the most part. So it's a little under $200 right now. And apparently they have another one that's like $250 or something like that, which I don't, fortunately I don't need. It looks like this is sufficient for streaming, for live streaming anyway. So that's what I'm doing. And then I'm sure converting $90 in Australia is a little different to the US, but yeah, it's a pretty good chunk, For $200 a month, it's not quite a car payment, but it would definitely cover my insurance and a few other things. So it's a decent, yeah, he does what I hope he does. I would love to know that Ajit Pai was watching my streams. I wish he would just jump into the chat there. Then I'd probably get kicked off YouTube. So we'll stay away from that for now. All right, so we'll come back to this. Feel free to, I want to keep this open for net neutrality discussion, but I also wanted to talk about a couple other things I thought were interesting that I'll just go through real quick here. I clarified, if you haven't heard of it, this is a great resource. If you're in the phone business, they will tell you all about what versions of iOS are available for what devices. They have jailbreaking tutorials. They have news for wireless stuff. I mean, they've got all kinds of cool information on this website. I used to use it a lot back in the jailbreaking days because we need to know like what software do we need to jailbreak this particular iOS and when is the next jailbreak coming out and stuff like that. So they have an article out right now that says that Apple is allegedly slowing down older phones with degraded batteries. So the gist of this is that if you have an iPhone and your battery is not performing optimally, which apparently is required for running some of the applications on the phone, that Apple will actually slow down the processing speed of the phone in order to make the battery last longer. So if you've ever had that feeling that, I upgraded my, hey Vernil, how's it going? If you've ever had that feeling that your phone is slowing down as it's getting older, even when you haven't necessarily performed a software upgrade, well, it looks like maybe there's something going on with Apple where they are wanting your phone not to start, not to be apparent that the battery's getting old. So to preserve battery power, they're slowing down the processes on the phone. There's actually an app, and I'm going to get the name of it here for you real quick, just in case anyone is interested. There's an app you can get within the App Store. It's called CPU Dasher. It's a free application, and what you can do with that is you can install it on your iPhone, and you can test the processing single and multiple core speed on your phone and see if it is still performing at the benchmarks that your phone should have. And this should give you an indication as to whether your phone is actually being, I want to say throttled, whether your iPhone or iDevice is being slowed down purposely by something that's built into the phone in order to preserve the battery power, to make it look like, for whatever reasons, that your battery lasts longer, I guess. I can't confirm this, but it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. If you could actually make the phone require fewer or less in the way of resources, and that would make the battery last longer, that would make sense to extend the battery life. But at the same time, obviously, there's a price to pay. If your phone's slowing down because it's trying to preserve battery power, wouldn't it be a better idea just to have something built into the phone that says, you need a new battery? Go get a new battery. Oh, that's right. You can't just pop the battery out of your iPhone by removing the back. You've got to take it to someone who knows what they're doing. So, or to the Apple Store, or look at your friend who's got the newer version of an iPhone and say, wow, your phone runs so much better than mine. I guess it's time for me to upgrade. I mean, that would make sense to me, right? So you can check this out again. It's called CPU Dasher X. It's in the App Store. Oh, let's close this. I got extra stuff open. It's probably slowing me down. Yeah, so it's kind of a cool way, I think. There's also some applications that you can use. Coconut Battery is one of them. There are a couple different ones that you can plug in, and it will tell you how many cycles you have on the battery in your Apple device if you happen to have one, or if you happen to work in a shop and you haven't used it already. It's really cool. You can take a customer's device and show them in numbers like what percentage of the battery is left as far as performance and how many cycles it's been through and so forth. But you can also now apparently check and see if your iPhone is performing at the benchmark speeds that it's supposed to be. Let's see. I just heard about this battery thing yesterday. I had a customer show me his settings battery and said the battery was bad. He also said his phone was slow. It makes a lot of sense. By the way, Mike, Z3X Easy JTAG just released box that can read-write UFS Samsung phones and Apple NAND read-write. Easy JTAG Plus. It's called, drumroll. Oh, that's what it's called. Okay, I thought you put the dots because there was more to come. Okay, so Easy JTAG Plus. Good information there, Wayne. Thank you. I did not know that. Thus, another reason to jailbreak your iPhone. You can overclock the speed with Cydia app. Yep, and then your battery, I would imagine, would die faster, but at least you'll know what's going on, right? Harvey, I have internet only at home, no TV. NAND and UFS coming next year. Okay, sorry, folks. I'm just talking to myself. I'm reading the comments, actually, if anyone's listening to the podcast. I try to read the comments so people know what the context is of what I'm talking about. And I try to stay caught up to everyone that's on here. I'm going to do that as long as I can. I'm very happy that this live stream is working and that we're seeing more participants every week. And at a certain point, it's going to be hard for me to keep track of the comments. But I'm going to try to stay on them as they come in for the time being. Harvey says, Nate, services in most larger cities in the U.S. require you buy bundled packages. Yeah, it sounds like, I got to say, everything I've heard about Australia so far sounds like there are a lot of advantages to living there, outside of all the crazy stuff that you guys have that kill people. And by that, I mean poisonous animals and spiders and sharks and jellyfish and all that stuff. But, of course, what we get to see is like all the extreme examples of scary monsters that you guys have there. But it sounds like there's a lot of cool things about Australia that I would enjoy. One of these days I'm going to get there. All right, so Beam, let me know what you guys think about this. There's a company, this is on Android Police, but there's actually a website that you can go to, Again, links in the bottom as soon as I finish this, or tomorrow, whichever comes last, because it takes me a while to go through the whole stream and add the timestamps and everything, but I promise I will. This is a $99 smart wearable button. So it's got an AMOLED screen on it that you can program. It connects to the Bluetooth on your phone, and you can display whatever you want on this little pin on your shirt or whatever clothing you happen to be wearing. And the reason I thought that this was interesting is because I can already see customers coming in asking us to fix their button, broke the AMOLED display, left it on their clothes and it went through the washing machine. And also, will this catch on? Does anybody really care enough about wearing a button that you can program messages or signs or maybe a name tag? I'm sure there's some application out there that this would be ideal for. But our customer's going to spend $100 for a wearable button with an AMOLED screen that they can control from their phone. Should be very interesting to see if this goes over or not. So the website, I'll go ahead and give it to you right now. The website is called beamauthentic.com. And they've got all sorts of examples here, like vote, baby to be, start here. I don't know what that's about. And supposedly this thing will go 24 hours per charge. I assume that means in the on position. You can load it with GIFs, whichever you prefer, slideshows, and you can keep 100 different pre-programmed beams, which is what they're calling them, on your device. So you can have 100 different little things programmed into this deal that connects to the Bluetooth on your phone, and you can shoot messages out to it for 24 hours at a time. And there's a power management feature that lets it go 48 hours. Again, I think the real question is how practical this is. Do people care about wearing this little thing that's going to project whatever message or an image or something on it? Maybe, I can see like maybe a corporate thing where you go to a meeting and instead of a name tag, you wear your little beam thing and then you turn on a message or something like that. I don't know. There's probably something I'm missing. I don't know if this is something that I would invest in, but I can definitely see it being broken easily. And then when someone comes in and asks you to replace the AMOLED screen on their beam wearable button, which is a $100 piece of equipment, and the AMOLED screen's probably going to be $75, we all know the answer to that. Buy another one, but I have a feeling that's going to be happening. Kangaroos in my street. What? You got kangaroos in your street? That's crazy, man. You guys see the video where the guy was boxing the kangaroo and then got in all kinds of trouble for it? There was a kangaroo that went after, had one of his dog in a chokehold. I didn't realize like kangaroos can be pretty vicious, and they'll go after dogs. And this kangaroo has this guy's dog in a chokehold. He runs up like an insane person and squares off with the kangaroo and ends up punching the kangaroo in the face. And I guess this thing looks like it's on steroids. I had no idea how muscular kangaroos can get. This thing just looks at him like, what are you doing? Like, he literally punches this kangaroo in the face. The kangaroo ends up taking off. He gets his dogs back, safely, I assume. And then, of course, animal rights activists blow up saying, what are you doing? You don't fight a kangaroo. You shouldn't strike an animal, and so forth and so on. And I didn't realize that was a thing. Like, people having their dogs attacked by kangaroos. That's pretty nuts. Okay. I thought burning money is a federal crime. Should be. I thought my new 8-port USB charger with in-amp meter for $20 was impressive. It is. That's cool. It's a in-amp. What? Defend my dog till my dying breath. And he would defend you the same way, I'm sure. Unless you have a dog like mine, he hides under the bed when it gets real scary. You know what's funny? I have a dog that will run after a pit bull. Like, he has no concept of his size. He's a lap dog. Okay, he's a tiny little dog. And any other dog that comes around, he will go after, and they'll look at him like, what are you doing? But if he hears a strange noise, he hides under the bed. So he's more of a watchdog than a guard dog. But I can see him getting into trouble with the larger animal because he has no fear of dogs. Like, he'll go after anything. It's nuts. And people that are dressed a certain way, it's a weird thing. He's a very discriminatory kind of dog. Kangaroos are very dangerous. They will grab you, but it's the kick from their legs which will rip your stomach out. Interesting thing there. I actually saw something about that was really crazy. When you wrestle, if you've ever had a cat and, you kind of play with them and you wrestle with them and they'll kind of grab you with their front paws and they'll start doing that scratching thing with their legs, like what you're describing with kangaroos. And that is basically their instinct that they're designed in order to disembowel their enemy, which is freaking scary. That's what your cat's trying to do when they do that. And I would assume kangaroos too, which, I don't know. It's such a weird animal. You know, we see them in cartoons and we always see them as being friendly and, you know, put them in a boxing ring and they can box and stuff. But look pretty crazy. My dog is racist. She despises white bald men. That's freaking hilarious. Yeah. I've noticed something about dogs, and that is if they haven't seen a certain, a person of certain color, height, you know, baldness, like you said, big hat. If there's anything that they're not used to seeing regularly, they seem to be, you know, very against it for whatever reason. It's probably because it's something different, I would imagine. Is net neutrality over in America? Sadesh, it is about 50% of the way over. Maybe some would probably argue more than that. So the FCC has decided that they are going to allow net neutrality to be repealed. We still have some actions that we can take. Hopefully, you know, between now and whenever it goes into effect, you can contract, if you're in the U.S., you can contact your congressperson. You can go to battleforthenet.com and they'll give you all the information you need to get a hold of the right person based on where you're at. If you're outside of the U.S., I would say stay tuned. We'll find out. You know, it looks like it's going to go away, but we really don't know. Support from India, really ashamed of Ajit Pai. Yeah, I don't know what. I really think that guy is just getting a big, a large amount of money from some companies, and he pretty much sold out. So it's sad, but you know, nothing against India. It's just another person in the U.S. who can be bought. Apparently, it doesn't really matter where they come from, does it? That's great. I don't know who made that, but welcome to the party, Ajit. You are not real popular around here. But I hope you're making a lot of money. There are many people who believe that you'll be spending most of the money that you get out of this deal on dental work. That's what I've been told. I'm not sure what that means. Taylor, alligators taste great too. I actually tried some alligator jerky recently, and tastes about how you imagine it would. It wasn't great, wasn't bad, but it was heavily seasoned. So, you know, there are like 30 plus different breeds of roos here. I didn't know that. Don't know too much about kangaroos. In any case, cheers to everyone. It is Thursday night. I am having a glass of cheap wine because it's after hours, and I guess we drink to celebrate or to mourn the death of net neutrality, whatever you prefer. All right, so Apple has invested $390 million in iPhone lasers, freaking laser beams. Okay, so. Apparently there is some sort of there's a manufacturer that makes some sort of laser that is used in the face recognition system on the iPhone X, and what they're saying is that Apple is buying into this company or investing into this company in a huge way because they are planning to include this in their augmented reality applications in the future, meaning that your phone will not just have lasers on the front side, it will have lasers that project from the rear camera or from the rear sensor in order to feed you information about augmented reality. I don't know, do you just hold your phone up to it and it works like a lens of sort, or do you wear goggles or something like that? I don't know, but it's really weird to think about phones having lasers coming out of the, you know, when I saw this, first I was thinking maybe they're making some kind of weaponry. You know, you have an iPhone with a laser built into it. You know, they sell a case that has a taser built into it already, right? So eventually will we have phones that work as laser weapons of some sort? I don't know. But Apple's buying big into it. So it looks like they will be using this for something. Now, it could be for future phones that are going to have the Face ID built into them. You know, maybe next year they roll out several models that are using Face ID, and that has something to do with this investment. But there's every indication that they will be using this in some way for augmented reality in future models. So that'll be interesting to see when that happens. Let's see. Ajit Pai, you are the most popular person in the U.S. Congrats. Is everyone enjoying their internet? Yeah, not for long, I suppose. On your mic. Don't try to act smart, fake Ajit. Oh, man. I would love to just... I wish Ajit Pai would get into a dunk tank and let us throw balls at the dunk tank, or maybe do one of those pie in the face things where you just, you know, maybe to raise money for charity, you get to go shove a pie into Ajit Pai's face. That would be great. He should really do that, you know, for the greater good. Mr. Pai, are you related to Arpu from The Simpsons? Galaxy S9 not getting quick charge. There was, Sadish, there was a deal recently with Galaxy Update that disabled the quick charge capability. So if you've upgraded your software, and I don't remember what it was, I assume the latest one unless they pushed a fix for it, there was definitely a problem with an update that disabled the wireless charge, or the fast charge, sorry. And in some cases, people's phones completely stop charging. So if yours is charging slowly, good for you. Hopefully Samsung, if they haven't already addressed this, they'll have another update that patches that, but that is a known issue that's been going on. So I don't know what the current status is, but I wouldn't dig into taking your phone apart yet, because more than likely it's a software thing. I do enjoy pies. Yeah. All right, what else do we have on the list here? The iPhone X notch. And I'll come back to net neutrality right after this. Ugly or not? What do you guys think? Apparently, what they're saying is that either way, it doesn't matter, because like most things, Apple, whether you love it or hate it, it gets them more media exposure. And that's, kind of the truth, right? It definitely makes the phone stand out. If you can see the screen on someone's phone and you see the notch, you know that they have an iPhone 10, so that kind of sticks out. Personally, I don't love it. I mean, I don't think it's a deal breaker or the end of the world. But I would have been fine if they didn't have the notch. If it was just flat all the way across the top, and you just use that extra space for, I don't know, maybe a headset jack or something. But it is hard to argue that no matter what you think about their notch on their iPhone, it's helped with marketing because more people are talking about it. And I can't believe that's really an article, but I guess it makes sense. It does kind of bring attention to the fact that it's all about getting people to talk about your product. And that was one of the things that I believe is part of the whole consumerism topic that I wanted to just kind of briefly talk about. Let me go back to the question here real quick. Mike, on my S7, my USB fast charger gets warm to the touch when charging. Is this a normal phenomenon? In my experience, yes. Often when you're rapid charging, your charger and in fact the phone itself will get very warm. It's a really interesting thing that I've noticed recently that I hadn't paid attention to in addition to that is that Samsung phones in general, I just happen to have my hand on the logic board right near where the processor was after completing a repair on a phone several times recently. And that processor, when it boots up, that thing gets so warm that the first time it happened to me, I thought that I had damaged something. I thought that maybe I had created some sort of short inside of the phone, or something had gone wrong or just quit working and it was heating up. And in fact, Samsungs run very warm. And this is why it's very important that we have that little heat sink material right up against the processor inside the back panel of the phone, or wherever, in the mid frame or wherever it happens to be located. Because without that thing, I believe those phones would melt or catch on fire. They get really warm. And yes, absolutely, when it comes to fast charging, it's always been my experience that things get very warm. If it gets so hot that it burns you, then you probably have a problem, but it's really not that out of the ordinary for them to warm up like that. Congress is biased. It paid pie to remove net neutrality. Well, we know that the lobbying, the companies that are lobbying definitely had a big hand in this. Anyone who stands to benefit from removing net neutrality, there's AT&T, Verizon, Comcast. There's like 4 or 5 big companies that, pretty much own anything. And yeah, once it gets to the point where they can do what they can, I know that they spent tons of money on getting this repealed, to the point where the FCC just says, we don't care what the public thinks. We've seen all these petitions and all these people talking about how they want to maintain net neutrality, and we don't care. So, hopefully Congress doesn't feel the same way or act the same way about this. If they do, then we're really in trouble, and it's an indication that, democracy, which, at this point, we don't really have a democratic system of government. I would say it's more of an oligarchy, if you want to call it that. Where big corporations have a lot of control over legislation and everything that we have in place when it comes to regulating or lack of regulating. But yeah, definitely a lot of money went into making that happen for them. So I think they're really pushing to see how far they can go before people just say that's enough, and then some sort of drastic measure is taken. Apparently, Jessa has been asked to do a teardown of an iPhone 10 on Good Morning America show. What? I didn't hear about that. That's pretty cool. I know that she's done some stuff with iFixit in the past, so they probably, somehow, because iFixit obviously gets a lot of media coverage, but then again, Jessa probably does too. She has a very, she has a lot of skills and knowledge, and on top of that, she has a couple things that, make her stand out from the crowd. And one is obviously she is a female technician, which is, I don't want to say unlikely, but it's uncommon. There are definitely a lot more men involved in the tech industry. So that, that makes her stand out. Not to mention that she's probably one of, if not the best in the business, at least, as far as what we can see on YouTube when it comes to diagnostics and micro soldering skills. I mean, she's awesome. So, take all that and put it together. And the fact that she has, I don't want to say an affiliation with iFixit, but she's definitely done some stuff with them before. That wouldn't surprise me if she does. I for sure want to see that. I would assume she'd put that on her channel. I'd love to check that out. That's awesome. I want to do an iPhone 10 teardown on Good Morning America, as long as they're paying for it. Good for her. I hope that she does. That'd be really cool. Ajit Troll Pie. I actually used to work for Microsoft Technical Support in Washington, D.C. I know that he worked for Verizon. Did he actually work for Microsoft Tech Support? That's interesting. Real world review in the house. What's going on? Yes, Mike, it's crazy how people believe that their phones run cold. My S7 Edge and S8 warm up a lot just from powering on the phone. I'm actually doing a teardown on it. Well, you better get on Good Morning America if you're tearing down an iPhone 10 because, it's more important that it comes to be first, right? No, not necessarily, but cool. I hope you're recording that. I definitely want to see it. I was really amazed at how warm Galaxies in particular run when they boot. I take it back. Actually, Motorola too, because I did a Droid Turbo 2, and I happened to, again, have my hand very close to where the processor was, and when that thing booted up, it gets really warm too. So maybe it's just Androids in general. Sadish said, according to my use of Samsung device, used original charger. If it still gets warm, there's some fault in the charge immediately. Replace it. Are you talking about the charger, Sadish? And Harvey, because if are you using the OEM charger and are you using a fast charger? That's probably a good question because there are Samsung chargers that are specifically designed for higher output for fast charging. I'm glad that you added that, Sadish. If you're using the correct charger, it is normal for it to get warm, but there's kind of a question, I think, as to, what's warm, what's hot, and what is too hot. So, if it runs differently than it did out of the box from day one, then there's probably cause for concern. But you're definitely going to generate some heat when you're fast charging because you're putting out probably 1.5 to 2 amps worth of current there. So I think that, it's really hard to, how hot is it exactly is the question. And definitely make sure that you're using a 2 amp charger if you're doing a fast charging on anything. And if you're charging a tablet, and this is another one that we run into when people bring in their iPad and they see it's taking forever to charge and they're using that tiny little square block that came with their iPhone, obviously that is not going to have the type of output that the fast charger does. So make sure you have a good charging block for sure. She had to buy an iPhone 10 to practice on. Was in her last stream. You do realize she has PhD in genetics. Yes, I do. I was aware of that. She's a very intelligent person. It's interesting that she switched from the study of genetics to phone repair. But hey, it's definitely an indication of her intellect and ability to acquire and implement information. I think she's awesome. She's really cool. I actually met her very briefly at CTIA in Las Vegas back in 2014. And she probably would not remember because everyone wanted to talk to Jessa. She was very popular there. So, yeah, good for her. She's smart. She has a successful business. And she definitely comes across as someone who really cares about, people. Not just making money and not just fixing devices, but assisting people in recovering their data. If you watched her when she talked, I can't remember, I think it was Wyoming. It might have been Wyoming, one of the states where they were doing a right to repair thing, and she showed up and she was talking, and you could see she was always almost getting teary-eyed because she was talking about how happy it makes her to assist people in getting their precious data back off their phone. So yeah, I mean, she's just an awesome person all around. Do people ever come back with aftermarket screens with the frame detached? Real world, can you answer that? And anyone else who's teching? Because I'm going to say in the, recently no, but probably not since the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus when we had a huge problem with that one. Hello, Eric Adam. We had for a while, but I haven't seen them coming off. Occasionally, I'd say very rarely, I might see one. Actually, I saw one on a Galaxy, I think is the last time I saw a frame coming off, and that was just an insufficient adhesive that was on the mid frame. But it's been a long time. They've got this cold press technique they use to attach the glass to the frame, and it seems to be very reliable now that they figured it out. So I haven't had that problem, but obviously it depends on your supplier also. Warm, but not enough to fry an egg. Well, hey, if you're not frying eggs, that's probably good news. But yeah, it will get warm. I mean, it's definitely going to get warm while it's charging. There's just a question of, what do you feel is too warm? There's probably a way we could come up with a number. In fact, I'm going to put that on my list. Harvey, what I will do is take my little temperature reader thing. I have one of those little, I'm going to blank on the name right now. It's an LED or something like that. No, it's an infrared. Sorry, it's an infrared little thing that I can aim at a charger and tell what the surface temperature is. I will measure the temperature on mine and then let you know what is normal, if you want to call it that. And I'll remind me about that later because I'll forget for sure. But I will make that. I said I'd make a list and then I said I'd forget it. Right? That doesn't make any sense. Let me grab a pen. All right. So I will add battery temperature or charger temperature for fast charging, and then next time I see you, Harvey, I will have an answer for you. In fact, maybe even make a video out of that one. Smartest repairer, definitely Soren from Electronic Repair School. Who's Soren? Who is Soren? The charger itself is warm, phone stays normal. Anything new with iPhone 7, 7 Plus button repairs? Not that I can think of. I have yet to reball or to replace a Turtle IC on one of those. That would be fun, but haven't had the opportunity yet. I've just been very, very careful when I remove them. There was someone earlier who was asking about, oh, you know what I did, John? It was, give me a second. I went back to a forum that I'm on, and they recommended one of the companies that I had mentioned in the stream as being a premium battery seller. And give me a second, and let's see if I can find it here. Let me look. I know I had that. Yeah, so it was actually Injured Gadgets. Injured Gadgets, and then there's one other one. It's called Battery IC something or other. Gosh darn it, where is it? Had a real goofy name. Battery. But in any case, the consensus, John, is that Injured Gadgets has some of the best batteries. Also, you can buy them from iFixit, but you will pay a premium. But if you're looking for something reliable that's going to last a long time, Injured Gadgets definitely should be on that list. 4 batteries. Like OEM, I guess when it says OEM, it is OEM. That's the whole problem behind it, right? Real world, any suggestions on battery suppliers? Because I know that you are probably have some information on that also. Let's see. It's generally caused by the customer rather than the part. During the winter, we have maybe 1 in 100 come back. But during the summer, it's about 25 out of 10. We mentioned him on your last stream, runs YouTube channel. Oh, it was Soren. Let me get the name, because you know what? Someone came in here and they had a very similar name. Someone came in named Gorin, and I thought I remembered it as being the same person. Okay, so I want to see. Can you link his channel, or are you able to link? See if you can put a link in here, and if not, we'll figure out a way. Or you can just spell it out to me, and I'll check it out. Check out his channel. I always want to learn more. Eric Adam, many jobs will be obsolete, but we'll always need people to fix stuff. Yeah, that's the thing. And when people keep asking me about whether to get into phone repair or not, I'd probably look at it at this point as, should I get into electronics repair or not? Because, even if things don't get harder to fix, what are the chances that people are going to be still walking around with the same type of device, next year, 5 years, 10 years from now? And if you're looking at this as a career, I would really look at it as electronics repair and not just phone repair, because you're going to have to be able to do many other things. No problem, John. Hey, I'll see if I can get Real World to give me a company name also, because I know that he does some battery buying also. Maybe there's another source you can go to. Do you ever get concerned about using aftermarket batteries after what happened with Samsung Note? I get concerned about using Samsung batteries after what happened with those are OEM batteries in the Note. I have one here, which I will eventually send back. I got a Galaxy Note 7. If anyone wants to buy this, because it's going to be the last of its kind, I'm sending it back to Samsung. I'm worried about this thing, and that's their OEM battery. So with the aftermarket ones, geez, point taken. Yes, we do need to be concerned that aftermarket batteries are safe. And, I'm really not concerned about my phone blowing up in my face, but realistically, I've seen enough Galaxies and iPhones where the batteries just expand and eventually rupture that I would be skeptical. But I'm really wondering, I don't think it's really been as much about the source of the battery itself, but rather the age of the battery. These things go bad. If you found an iPhone 5 laying around at this point that hadn't been used in several years and has the original battery, the battery's probably expanding. I mean, they do that over time. And what really concerns me is that it's not easy for a consumer to just pop the battery out. When it starts pushing through the back panel, you used to just take the panel off and go, oh, my battery's swollen, I need a new one. Now you say, oh, my phone just exploded. The screen's ruptured, the screen's cracked because the battery expanded so far. So I've got quite a few aftermarket batteries, and I haven't seen a higher, a particularly high defect rate, so I don't really worry about it. Even on my own phones, I've got aftermarket batteries, and in some cases, it seems like, I want to say they work better than the original, but that's probably just because the original that I removed was timed to be retired. So I'm not worried about it, and I don't really talk on my phone like this. I'm always on Bluetooth, so if my phone ever explodes or catches on fire, well, hopefully it's not in my pocket. That could be even worse. But I don't generally keep it by my face, and it's usually, I think, when they're in operation or being worked on that they blow up. I just tried them. What'd you try? You're concerned? Okay, I don't know. Oh, if you just tried to put a link, just put some spaces in there. Or you know what? What was his name again, Wayne? I'll scroll. I'll go through the chat later on and find it. No worries. Injured Gadgets has good parts, but I have had good luck with OEM batteries from eBay, but wouldn't recommend buying bulk batteries from eBay. Search electronic repair school. Okay, no problem. I'll look for that. In fact, I'm going to keep this chat log so I can go through here and add in the timestamps and everything. I'll buy it. Oh, you want to buy it, Jeff? Because Samsung's going to give me about $1,000 for it. So you're going to have to, I'd have to put you, obviously, up against that to bid for a higher amount. Because they're buying it back at full price, And this is, I think it's a 60, is it 64 or 128? I'll have to look it up, but it's a pretty decent price on it. If you really want to collect it, oh, one other thing I should mention, screen is broken. Ooh, I know, that's a deal breaker on this one. You would have to replace the screen too. Do I need different repair certificates? Eric, short answer is it really depends on where you're at as far as what you're going to be repairing. For the most part, at least in the US, you've got to have a business license, and if you're in California, you've got to have this certificate from BEAR, which is the Bureau of Electronics and Appliance Repairs. And really all that is a fee. It's not really a certificate. So for the most part, if you want to repair phones and go into business doing that here, you need to have a business license in most cases, unless you're just doing stuff on the side. But there's not a lot in the way of certification. You should definitely know what you're doing, and if that requires being trained to do that, then you should definitely do that. But certificates at this point in time don't mean a lot, no matter where they came from. It just means that you completed someone's course and their materials. It doesn't really give you anything in the way of, outside of Apple certification, which really is just an overpriced way of limiting what you're allowed to do by Apple. So while I don't recommend it, there is an Apple certification you can get for changing out, I want to say, screens and batteries or something like that. But if you use that in your business, then they limit what you can do beyond that, and you don't have a lot of options as far as what you can repair. So, and it's not cheap. So just something to think about. Lithium-ion batteries of all kinds, dangerous. Yes. And you think that a lot of research should be going into figuring out how to make lithium-ion batteries safer in general. And here's the one that really freaked me out. Okay, I saw a news story about this, and I'm sitting here thinking about how lithium-ion batteries can explode and have problems. And then what came to mind is this. You know, everything I use, if I can, what is right and what is left? Everything I use, as far as sound goes, is all Bluetooth. And I'm taking a lithium-ion battery, 2 of them, probably, or at least one, and putting that in my ear. So what happens if this battery explodes? You probably won't see me on here anymore because I'll be having some serious problems. That really, that thought hit me. I was like, wow, what if my lithium-ion battery in my headset explodes? And then, allegedly, it happened on a plane where there was a woman who was wearing a headset and she felt her ears starting to get really warm and fortunately took them off just in time so that it exploded like right above her, like on her chest instead of in her head, which could have been pretty bad. So I never heard any follow-up on that story. And, again, I'm very skeptical of any type of media these days, but supposedly it already happened. And lithium-ion batteries, yes, become very unstable when there's a bridge between the anode and the cathode, or they reach a point where they call thermal runaway, where a process is happening and it's already started, but there's no indication of it until it reaches like this critical mass point, and then the battery blows up, and you don't know when it's happened, when it's happening. So that's a really scary thing too. Let's see. Can you use the phone without the battery just plugged in a power bank? Depends on what kind of phone you have. Some phones will power up by being plugged in, but some phones have to have a charge on the battery. With the Galaxies, I don't think you can if the battery is completely discharged. I think you've got to get it charged up enough. Yeah, if your battery on your S7, I think you had, if your battery's completely dead, you're not going to be able to use it even when it's plugged in. You've got to have a sufficient output from the battery to power the phone, and you won't get that from the charger itself. Vernil, I need a phone. Okay. When are you coming to Trinidad? Oh, if you're talking to me, I don't know. But hopefully when I become independently wealthy and get to travel the world, I will put that on my list of places to visit for sure. That in Australia. Do you have people coming in saying the phone's cracked on their own? All the time. John Cassidy, if you are not already familiar with nightstand damage, it is at epidemic proportions right now. I can't tell you how many customers have put their phone on their nightstand. They wake up in the morning and the screen is cracked, and not just a minor crack, like it's completely destroyed and they don't know what happened. So that's kind of a joke within the industry. Phones break themselves, glass suddenly just cracks for no reason, or I drop it on the carpet from 2 inches high and it explodes. Yeah, we get that quite a bit, especially after a repair that they did recently that was, a significant cost to them, and then, I've only had it for a week and it just broke on its own. Well, obviously we know better than that, unless, and I always say unless because there are exceptions to every rule, unless the screen or the display or the digitizer was not installed properly or care was not taken to make sure that all of the edges that go around the screen are not bent out of shape. I've seen phones where a display has been forced into a frame that's dented and it's just tight enough to fit. But of course, when the phone gets hot, anytime you have heat going on, you have things that expand, and then when they cool down, they contract, and the phones, can be sitting on the counter doing nothing, and the screen can crack because of that change in temperature, because there's stress being placed on the glass constantly. So outside of that, yes, we do have people whose phones just miraculously break themselves with no indication of why there's a big round, impact mark on the center of the screen. They don't know what happened. It happens, and I'm sorry, but it still cost me the same amount of money to get the part and to perform the repair. So that's where we're at, especially in the rare case when we have a customer come in and say, well, I just got this screen from you guys and it cracked, and can I get my money back? I say, if it was a defective screen, I'd be happy to return it, to give you a refund and return it to the manufacturer, but they're not going to give me credit for this. So there's no way I can get my money out of this cracked screen because, looking at it, I can tell you that they will deem this physical damage. And that's just one of those unpleasant conversations. It's really never fun that you will have to, that we all have to have with our customers on occasion. It happens. Nobody likes breaking a phone and then having to pay for it. I don't either, And then, a certain number of people look at it as, well, I'm paying my carrier $45, $55, $75 a month. Why do I have to pay when I get my phone fixed? Well, because you don't have insurance. It's usually the answer. Try to get caught up on these comments because they're coming in quick. Soren just did it. Okay, I will definitely check out Soren's channel. Actually, I have a pen and paper. I'm going old school here. I'm going to write down Soren, and I will check out his channel for sure. Can you sell back a Note 7 if it's FRP locked? I believe so. I have every reason to believe that. Oh, that's a really good question. I would think so. And here's why. I'm sending this phone back with a broken screen. And Samsung may not like it, but they don't want these phones out on the market. I can't say for sure, but it seems like they would return it. I don't think they would care about the FRP, but you could say you lost your password or something, I would imagine. I haven't tried, but I would think they would take it back. Bring back lead acid batteries, yeah, like the ones they used to put in camcorders. Remember those things? Well, we still have them in our cars, right? I'm surprised that we don't have different battery technology for most automobiles at this point, outside of hybrids and electric vehicles. Most vehicles still have a lead acid battery, right? Isn't that what they're making? I don't know. I haven't bought a car for a long time. Dead S7 battery you'll need to kickstart with the lab bench power supply. Samsung Note 7, sorry, I'm reading the comments backwards here. Samsung Note 7 re-released in select markets with different battery. Interesting. Did not know that either. Where should I get started? Just start asking people for their broken phones, put an ad in the newspaper, or just set up a kiosk in mall kiosk. So I assume that you're just getting started. First place I would start is with practicing. Get some phones that you can take apart, put together, feel proficient with doing repairs on. Focus on the most popular 4 or 6 that are on the market right now. That's going to be iPhone, probably from 6S up to 7. I wouldn't worry too much about the 8 and 10 just yet. You're not going to see a lot of people willing or able to pay for those right away. But over time, obviously, those will be the next thing. Get a couple of late model Galaxy phones and understand how to put them together and take them apart and what goes into that. And then if you're talking about where to actually start your business, it really depends on how deep you want to get in. And I have this conversation a lot, so I don't want to, I think I'll probably make another video about, just getting into the phone repair business. But for anyone who comes through training, I always tell them, start with your friends and family. They're going to be a lot more patient and understanding with you. And, as much as we would like every repair to just go smooth sailing, oftentimes we run into very small things that slow us down when we don't have a lot of experience. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with people that aren't highly demanding at that point, if possible, and who aren't going to go write some nasty review because you didn't have their phone ready in 45 minutes like they planned. So as far as a place to start, I don't know about a mall kiosk. Mall kiosks tend to be expensive depending on where you're at, and you will have to sign a contract. So if it were up to me, all things being equal, it's going to be a smaller cost for a kiosk too. So that's a tough one. That's a lot of good questions. I might have to come back to that because it's going to be hard to answer those. Put an ad in the newspaper, I would say no. This is just my opinion, but I don't think newspapers reach too many people that are interested in technology, if that makes sense. Maybe, we started out putting ads on Google, and that got very expensive, and even running Facebook ads at this point, which is an effective marketing tool, tends to cost a lot for what you get. So I would say, one, network, talk to friends and family. If you're the type of person who's okay with cold calling businesses, like walking into a business and handing out a business card and saying, here's what I do, I'm here to serve you, that goes a long way, and this is also a good method to reach a lot of people at the same time. If you can get to the receptionist and she doesn't, treat you like a salesperson, which she shouldn't, because you're not selling anything. You're telling people that you have a service. I'm a big fan of cold calling on businesses and wireless carriers and saying, hi, I'm Mike. Here's what I do. Here are my business cards. If I can help you out, let me know. And tell your friends. And, obviously, if no one has a broken phone at that point in time, they don't need your help. But, eventually they might. And if they like you, they're going to buy from you. That's what a lot of sales comes down to. Beyond that, having a social media presence, so, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, that you happen to be involved in, you probably should be involved in all of them. Have something on there, build a business profile and put up some pictures of before and after things about phones and just start saying, hey, we fixed this today. And eventually people are going to come onto your feed and go, oh, I didn't know you did that. And then you always have the option of Facebook advertising also. which is interesting, and YouTube advertising, which I'm going to do a whole video on because I think this is really an untapped market for a lot of people in the repair business, and it's quite affordable, and you can target particular markets. Now, how many people are watching YouTube that have a broken phone? That's, obviously a conflict there, but it is a thing that it won't cost you a lot of money, and you can really control the budget on Facebook and YouTube. I don't recommend Google AdWords in general, but if your market is not saturated, then that's a great place to go. Preferably you want to rank organically though. That's what I, definitely have a website, definitely have some social media, and definitely try to get ranked on Google, because that is where people often go looking for services when they don't already have someone that they use. You can come out and do phone repair. You'll make good money. That would be cool. What if I could pay for my trip? If I could go there, repair some phones, and pay for my trip and my stay, that would be worthwhile. That'd be great. And then I'll just take my camera with me and do a live stream from there, if possible. Working under someone, that's a good idea. Actually, I should have brought that up. If you want to get started and not invest a lot of money, absolutely. Find a company that's hiring technicians. And don't expect to make a lot of money, because obviously they've got to make a profit and then pay you on top of it. But that's a great way. I'm glad you said that. You kind of partially answered your own question there. If you can get experience working for someone else, most definitely. And in fact, you'll often be around other people who already are proficient in the skills that you're honing at that point. But the thing is, that's not going to get you a lot of customers when you leave. You still really need to think about your marketing strategy, if and when you leave that company. My nightstand damage all the time. I had a lady tell me it was on her nightstand next to a glass of water, and it may have condensed. It literally dumped water. This is my favorite one. No phone has ever gotten wet before, right? I mean, if a customer brings you their phone, unless it's just obvious or they're overly concerned about it, it's almost never been wet. And like you said, I've opened up phones and there's water on the battery. Like you can see the water dripping out of the phone. I don't know what happened. Well, sometimes people hand their phones to their kids, or, someone else that's, hey, can I borrow your phone for a second? Oops, got it wet. Let me dry it off and don't tell you. So, I'm sure there are some legitimate situations where people really didn't drop their phone. They really didn't get them wet, but someone did, and maybe they're not aware of it. But I suspect a lot of times, they know what happened. And it's like they think that maybe it won't cost as much if they didn't actually, get the phone wet. And I try to convey to people that, think of this as, when you go to the doctor, if you want to be healthy, you need to give him all of the information that he asked for. You need to tell him what you've been eating. You need to tell him how much alcohol you consume. You need to tell him if you smoke. He's not going to judge you. He's trying to help you, tell you what you should do to make things better. And when we're behind the counter, we're trying to solve a problem and fix somebody's phone. And when they withhold information, like, oh yeah, it got wet and I already took it somewhere else and that place already cleaned it and it still doesn't work. And now I don't know where the corrosion is. I don't know what part of the phone got wet. I'm just like, please just be honest with me. I don't care if your phone got wet. I don't care what it's been through. The more information I have, the more I can help you. So when I suspect someone's like holding back, I try to get them to open up a little bit there. We need this here in Trinidad. You don't have any phone repair shops in Trinidad? Why? I'm surprised. It seems like phone repair is everywhere now. Badly. All right, I'm gonna have to look into it. If it's really that badly needed, geez, that would be great, wouldn't it? How many phones do you fix a day? In a normal day, in a normal 8-hour day, when I'm teching, in store, it's probably somewhere between 8 and 12. I would say on an average 10. That's probably a good round figure for a normal 8-hour day for things like screen repair and general repairs. Now, if I'm doing things like micro soldering, if I've got to go from start to finish, disassemble the phone, take the shielding off, remove the chip, reball a chip in many cases, put it back on, test the phone, put it all back together, address unforeseen issues like other things, like maybe I knock a capacitor off and I've got to replace it, or maybe there's something else wrong with the phone that's bad. Obviously that takes a lot longer. So I've had phones that have taken me half a day before. I'd like to do at least like 3 or 4 on that level in a day, because if not, it's going to be hard to make money. But it kind of varies. But I'd say if for general repair like screens and charge ports, and not too much involving anything very in depth as far as the micro soldering, probably 10 is a good number, good average. I know nothing, by the way, Eric. Okay, well, definitely look for information and experience before you start a business, start any kind of business. But this one in particular, unless you're hiring someone to tech for you, you definitely need the training before you start worrying about how to get customers. Make sure you're comfortable with and you understand how these things work, because you don't want to learn on real phones that belong to real people who may have problems if you cause them not to work anymore, which is worst case scenario. Buy broken phones. Yep. Start replacing screens. Yep. I agree. Harvey, I got to say, I still think that iPhone screens are like the easiest thing in the world. Even the 10 is, looking like, I haven't done one yet, but we keep breathing a sigh of relief every year because that's what breaks, and that appears to be easy to fix. Now, the back is going to be a little different, obviously. Kiosk, not too many distracting people. Word of mouth, best advertising you'll ever use. Look after your customers. No, look after you. 95% word of mouth. Agree completely. Kiosks, I would think, would be, too many distractions. Yeah, not just people, but sound, noise, and people, obviously. Kids screaming, people running around, bumping into you. I don't know how people do it in a kiosk where if you've seen, they have repair carts. It's not even an enclosed kiosk. It's a cart, and they stand, like the tech bench is on the outside where the public can just walk by and bump into you. I don't know how they could do that. Beha, what's going on, man? Hey, I'm surprised to see you here on an evening stream. Cool. DIY videos for fixing phones. Let's see. Last guy bullshitted about his... Oops, I didn't mean to say that. Sorry, Harvey. Sorry, everybody. Try to keep it family friendly. I'm just reading the chat. About his wet iPhone, I said, yeah, they get wet if you talk dirty to them. He looked at me trying to figure out if I was joking. Call me seriously. All right, Vernil, how do I call you? Don't put your number here in the chat, though. Shoot me a message on my channel. I'm interested to hear more. So you have your own store or work for someone else? I have my own business. I work from home. I go to stores where people work, and I do training, and on occasion I do some of my projects at stores that are owned, basically part of a family business. So kind of all of the above. So I do consulting, I do training for other companies, I do my own training program, and I repair customers' phones most of the time at home for my mail-in business, but on occasion I do go into a store to work there also. So it just really depends on the day of the week and what's going on. Wow, I caught up on the comments. I just bought a customer a new iPhone 7 Plus 32 gig today because I damaged the home button, ouch, while I was talking to him during the repair. That's even worse than just damaging it, right? It's when they're like kind of distracting you and asking questions, and then you break their phone and then it's still your fault. That sucks, man. I feel bad for you. And here's a thing to throw into that, because when you look at this from the outside and say, like, how much money is it going to cost me to get some phones to practice on, because I've got to spend all this money, whether it's buying them off eBay, and in some cases when you're in business having to buy a phone for a customer to replace them. I assume, Jeff, that you're keeping the phone that was damaged, and that's usually the way that we have to look at this. If there's any bright side to it, is that if we damage something while we're working on it, yes, we have to replace it, but we're going to keep whatever was left of that device that we're working with. And then when we buy these things on eBay, or broken phones to practice on, there's still going to be some good parts in there, so that will at least partially offset the cost of having to invest in equipment, which it's a big deal, especially if you're working on $1,000 phone. That could almost put people out of business. For your mail-in business, do you ship P.O. Box or to your home address? For my business, I ship to a P.O. Box. I would not entrust any mail carrier or partial delivery system to deliver to my house, because I've had problems in the past. In particular, when I buy things online, the delivery system is horrible. So I have them go to the P.O. Box, and that's where I pick them up. I think that's much safer and more secure, and I'm sure to get a tracking number, and there's no question about whether, something goes wrong, I have a tracking number that says what the post office did with it, and I prefer it that way. If they were to drop it at my house, I can't be here all the time to accept the package. So if they were to say, well, we dropped it off and it's not here, it's kind of like my word against theirs, which means I end up having to take care of the problem. So yeah, P.O. Box for sure on mine. For the home-based business, let's see, where were we? I just want to say thanks for the advice on things. That's a common question. Awesome. Egbert, glad. I'm happy if anyone benefits from this stream in any way whatsoever, except for Ajit Pai. I don't want him to learn anything. He doesn't know anything he doesn't need to know. He's the only exception to that rule. Jeff, let's see. Yes, I have the damaged phone. Yeah, so I know it sucks, Jeff. We've all been there at least once. And if not, someone will be at some point. At least, hopefully, you can salvage something from the damaged phone. And if it's just the home button, then you've got a working phone minus the home button, right? Just with the message. There may be a way around that. So I guess I don't think there's any reason why I can't share this here. If you've got that damaged phone and you've got it off their iCloud, I assume, you should have some options with Apple, even if it's paying for an out of warranty repair for them to replace a device that has a working home button, which then, I don't know if that would offset it enough to make up for the difference, but you might be able to sell it at full value at that point. So on that one, I would, so you just commented real world. If you put a bad home button on there, Apple will fix the screen and the home button for the same cost. So there you go. So yeah, you're not going to lose too much on that one. And you took care of the customer right away. So even if they were not happy initially, at least they have confidence in you doing the right thing, and they know, and that goes a long ways. When I made a mistake, I'll tell the customer, here's what happened. We did this. We're going to take care of it. And I think the appreciation that you get from them for being honest really reinforces a customer loyalty. So awesome. Yeah, and you should be able to recover from that one. Wayne Taylor started in the repair business because in the early days prices were high, so looked into fixing my own. Then one thing led to another, word spread, and a year later had to open a shop, learn to micro solder under a microscope. Many hopeless micro solderers out there. Couldn't agree more. If you want to do this, screens are one thing, but there are screen repair stores on every corner in some cities, and outside of Trinidad, obviously. But at some point, it seems like that's what we're going to be seeing a lot of in populated areas. So the real, and I don't want to discount what anyone does for a living. If you fix screens for a living and make money, awesome. But it's definitely a different skill set when you get into the micro soldering part. So if you can do that, you're going to have far less competition in that category. And like we talked about earlier, this isn't just about fixing phones. You can fix a lot of different electronics when you gain that knowledge, those skills and that information, and start understanding the diagnostic part of it, which is really kind of where I'm working at right now. I've got for general component repairs and replacements and things that we know go wrong and that we can find, and corrosion is one thing. When you get to the really complex stuff where you've got to diagnose some oddball problem, and you have to have an understanding of how the inside of the phone works. So right now I'm really studying schematics and ZXW tools and watching videos and wanting to get to the point where no matter what is wrong with it, I can fix it. That's my ultimate goal, or tell them it's unfixable for sure. And there's some weird stuff that happens out there that's often very difficult to diagnose. So I have to send it to Jessa Jones, I guess. Let's see. Right now I'm repairing a 5C. Cool. Jeff Short, another ideas, contact repair shop. So I'm just reading the comments here. Mike and I repair. A lot of people say micro soldering is where the money is. Yeah, there's certainly less competition, and because of the skills and the knowledge that go into it, justifiably it costs more to have someone perform those repairs. So I would encourage you to explore that option. And I think that the textbook stuff is something anyone can learn. When it comes down to actually handling the soldering iron and getting good with the hot air, my best advice is, if you get into that, be very patient, because you will not start out with micro soldering skills the first day. Probably not the first week, that are going to make you feel good about it. So there's definitely a learning curve and practice that goes into it. I know that some people pick it up faster than others, but a lot of people that I know took quite a while before they became proficient at it. So you really have to be patient, because if you don't stay at it, it's very easy to get discouraged and feel like, wow, this is just not something I can do. It's not easy, but yes, I'd agree there's real money in it, and should continue to be for a long time. Outside of this iPhone 10 sandwich board thing, I don't know how that's going to work, but I have a feeling we'll find out soon. What would be cool is if Jessa went on Good Morning America and tore down an iPhone 10 and then got into the logic board itself and separated that, and just, even if it destroyed the phone, just to see how that thing's put together. That would be really cool. But electronic repair business, still side to full-time job. Okay, so Wayne, you're working full-time and you're just doing this on the side. Cool. 32 veteran copper Oh, 32 veteran copper? Does that mean you're a cop? We're a cop? Veteran copper. Shift work allows me to run business, but I have great techs working for me. Oh, that's cool. So you're running the business and doing another job at the same time? You guys are busy. You guys are busier than me. Let's see. Was that the last slide? I think it might have been. Let's see if we can do this preview thing here. Oh, it's probably going to shift either way. That's all right. Let's see what is coming up next. Oh, it won't let me do it like that. That might be, work with me here. Nope, that was it. We're back to net neutrality. It went in a complete loop back to the beginning. So I have covered everything. Whoa, it's going to be 8 o'clock. I can't believe how long this stream went. It's usually about an hour. So let me catch up on these comments again. And any closing statements for net neutrality, feel free to throw them out there, or anything else. I'm going to log out here pretty quick. Let's see. If you have a shaky hand, micro soldering would be difficult. I agree. Although there are some steps that you can take to kind of compensate if you have a somewhat shaky hand. If you have a real shaky hand, you're gonna have problems. But a lot of people that I've worked with have found that setting their hand on top of something so that it's in a position exactly where your iron wants to be, instead of instead of holding your hand in the air, if you've got something like a book sitting here and you use this to keep your hand at the level that you need it to be while you're micro soldering, you won't have that shakiness that you get from just holding your hand out in the air. So for what it's worth, I found that a lot of people see that as being very helpful when it comes to shaky hands. But yeah, it certainly would help to have a steadier hand. Do you hate or like body swap when the frame is bad on one phone? I'm doing it now, just asking. Do you like or hate body swap on the frame? It really kind of depends on the phone. That's probably something I'd like to do more with, when the frame is bad. Are you talking about like an iPhone 6s or iPhone 7 or something like that? If you can be more specific, I can probably answer better, because it really depends on what I'm working with. You see Lewis handshakes. Yeah, it's funny. Lewis, who is probably at least, as far as MacBook repairs, I think probably the best known and most knowledgeable person on YouTube. And I've heard him more than once say, yeah, my soldering skills suck. Don't judge me. And but he gets it done. So that's pretty funny. The right tools are critical. Another good point. Don't go with cheap microscope, hot air station, and soldering irons. Yeah, really don't, because you'll end up spending the money again. Unless really, if you can, it'd be great to go to someone who has a soldering station and let you practice and see what it's like. But yeah, for the most part, there is a big step though. Going from a okay soldering station to a pretty good soldering station. It's a big difference in price. It's like 3 to 4 times as much. So I think that's an entire topic to itself. Hot air station, get the quick 861DW unless you've already got something better. This thing, I love this hot air station. It is a difference of night and day. If you watch my micro soldering tools video, I have a link for it there. I'll try to add it on here too. But yeah, definitely get good hot air. Cheap hot air is terrible because it's not consistent. That's one of the biggest problems with it, is you just don't always have the same temperature. So you think you have it set right to do the same job again, and you don't. 32 years police officer, and yeah, a lot of cop customers. That's cool. Yeah, so and that's another one, is whatever it is that you are involved in, whether it's an occupation or a school that you went to or an organization that you belong to, networking is definitely a great way to start. And it just kind of builds on itself geometrically. You tell one person and they tell 2 people, and then those two people go on and on, kind of like a multi-level marketing scheme. But the word will get out if you do a good job. Jeff, thanks, Mike, and everyone. This is a fun and informative live stream. Time to join Mike with a glass of cheap wine. Yeah, and I'm getting ready to log off here too. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you showing up. I definitely wouldn't be doing it if you weren't here. So I am this close to working out how to get a second camera on here while I'm talking to someone else, because I can do that through Google Hangouts, but I really don't like the format. I like having functionality here and the chat here and the slides and everything, and you can't do that with Hangouts. But I want to have people on here to talk to also in real time, and there's just this thing about lag on the internet. Yes, iPhone 6s. If the frame's really badly bent, I would try to repair the frame. There are several tools that you can use to straighten them out, but I know they'll never be exactly right, you know, as long as the customer's okay with it. If I'm going to swap out the entire frame on an iPhone 6, I'm going to have to charge accordingly. You know, I mean, you know how much time and energy goes into that. And a lot of times you have to swap out the small parts because the ones that come with the replacements just aren't as good. So I don't like to swap out the frame when it comes to the amount of labor involved and trying to justify the cost to the customer. But if someone says, hey, I'm willing to pay you whatever your labor rate is for the time to do it, then okay, I just know that I've got to set aside probably a good hour to get that thing swapped out. So I prefer not to, but if they're really badly damaged, you know, you have to. So I'm actually getting ready to do another frame conversion on a 6 Plus that I'm switching over to. I mean, it's just such a headache. And then a lot of times you get those replacement frames and there's one thing that's off a little bit. Yep, keep parts in stock. People don't like waiting. Yeah, 5 minutes is a long time apparently when it comes to phone repair. 4X Quick 861S here, best of the best. Cool. Is that like the newer one? Because I think I heard about that. I love the one that I have. I mean, it does everything that I need to and more probably. Mike, when you're micro soldering, how good is your ventilation? I am ashamed to say probably not as good as it should be. And I'm working on getting a newer fume extraction system that will vent hopefully outside of the building that I'm in completely. It could be much better, Harvey. I've got a filter on, but it doesn't do a whole lot, and I don't have a lot of space where I'm working here. So, you know, unfortunately, probably not doing my lungs justice. And that is another one of my priorities I'm working on here. Nate, thanks for stopping by. Good to see you again. Enjoyed the video. That was pretty cool how you had the gloves on for the toilet phone, which, you know, we all know that one, right? Sorry, the quick 856. I'll have to check that out, Wayne. I don't think I've seen that one. I know there was another 861 or there was something else similar to that. Maybe it's the one you're talking about that was newer. I love this thing. For the money, I mean, I don't think you can beat it, really. All right, I need to get out of here. It's almost 8 o'clock. I don't think I've done a 2-hour live stream yet, so this was cool. Thanks again to everyone for participating. This is awesome. I will be back next Monday at 2 p.m. I will not be on Monday the following week because that will be Christmas, and then after that is going to be New Year's. So I'm not even sure how that's going to work out because usually Christmas Day and New Year's Day are not a good time to, you know, not be with the family. But I don't know. I will be here next Thursday and every Thursday. Again, as long as net neutrality going away doesn't affect that, at 6 p.m. next week. I will see you all then. And until then, see what I can come up with that's interesting and helpful, hopefully for everyone in the business or people who use phones. 861DW, same as the 856, is new foot operated model. Oh, that's cool. That would actually be really helpful. I never even thought about that. I didn't even think 4S still existed, and the other day before yesterday I had to replace the screen on one. I think the oldest phone I saw recently was like a 3GS. Like, yeah, they somehow hang in there, keep working. I don't know. All right, I'm going to wrap it up with that. I will see you next time.